Hello and welcome. Today we've got Sean O'Hara, and today we are going to be discussing the psychology of the internet and the media, where these people, the deep state, have set up the internet to control us, and mind control. Then there's a lot involved, and we're going to talk about how it's affected us and what we need to do. Now, just before we begin, you can subscribe to my Instagram channel at nicholas.veniamin, so you can follow all my newsreels. Sean, thank you so much for joining me today. I was going to say helping me today because I know you're a clinical psychologist, but thank you so much for joining me. How are you and what have you been up to, sir?
Well, Nick, it's great to see you. A big, huge Merry Christmas and Happy Holiday to you. And as always, big thank yous for all the good stuff that you do, all the great people you've been interviewing. And I want to wish all your listeners Merry Christmas, Happy Holiday, whatever your seasonal persuasion is. So we're ending one year and going into a real big another year. So myself and my colleagues have just been really following the media, following the stories, seeing the shifts in where they want to take narrative, the information that's put out. And again, just as media psychology, just looking at the information and how it's impacting people. So yeah, I thought we would hit on that a little bit today.
Absolutely. First of all, it's Merry Christmas. And yeah, you're right. Merry Christmas to you too and your family. Thank you very much. Absolutely. There's a lot of narratives going that I want to also talk about with you because there's a new series, there's a new Netflix series or a film, should I say, called Leave the World Behind. And when you see the directors behind this film, Obama was involved in writing the script. And in the script, it has a sign that says Death to America. And it's about a family, two families that merge together who are strangers to begin with. And they try to survive it in a blackout. First of all, why don't you tell me if you've heard this film? It's a very new film, so you might have not heard of it. But what do you think about the narrative behind this? What's it supposed to do to the people watching it?
Well, I have heard of it. And you asked a while back, why do people come in for psychology? Well, they come in because a number of different reasons. Some things are going good, some things are going bad. But lately, people have come in with lots of anxiety, lots of anger, lots of depressed mood. And I've heard from several clients about this movie. And it's very kind of unnerving that it's the same as the nuclear war movies that we see and the other disaster movies we see. This is like the media is going to go out. There's going to be a cyber attack. There's going to be an outage. And this has been talked about for just a decade at least, that we could have this big outage. And one of the things that we've talked propaganda, and this film is, of course, information and propaganda. There's something called predicting the narrative or predicting the event. It's just a form of propaganda. And what they do is they start talking about what's going to happen. So this movie is really kind of projecting onto everybody that we could have an outage, what that will look like, and what will be the outcome of that. So it's conditioning the psychology of people, conditioning their belief systems, getting them to have anticipatory expectation of what's to come. And that's kind of a psychological term, but we anticipate when we see something, then we're like, wow, this could happen.
So when they give us a movie to watch, where you just said they actually give us, they help us anticipate what could happen. Does this allow the brain to accept that reality when it does happen because it's not alien to the brain?
Exactly. And it's also a process of conditioning. If you keep seeing something over and over again, yes, you do exactly what you said. Start to accept it, start to be conditioned that this is a likelihood or a probability. It's scary, but this is what it's looked like. We'll survive it. The world will be different afterwards. And again, we've been seeing apocalyptic films for a long time, and they haven't fortunately come true yet, knock on wood, but the likelihood they could is probable in this year coming or maybe soon after.
What's the purpose of that, of a blackout? What do you think the purpose is of a blackout, and how long would it last for?
Okay, well, I'm glad you asked that. Here's two things that we've been talking a lot with our group. And The most important two things I really believe that are going on in the world right now is number one, we have a global geopolitical financial problem coming where we have the central banks, which if you people don't know what the central banks are, you need to get educated quick because they're a debt-based system. We're all dependent on them and they're bankrupt, which means we're bankrupt. And we're coming to the end of a fiat system cycle. And it happens every 50 years, 60, 70. It's usually done, switched over because of a disaster or war or something like that. I heard about it 45 years ago when I was a kid driving around in the car with my mom and dad. And I was like, Mom and Dad, why are all the cars on the side of the road? Why is there no gas? Why do we have to wait 5 hours in line to get half a tank that costs $500? So, number one most important thing is that we have very serious financial problems. And when they come to fruition, there's going to be problems with that. And people are saying that this blackout, if it happens, or this cyber strike, or the end of the world type thing, that would be one reason to reset. And we've been hearing reset from Klaus Schwab and other people for a long time. The second most important thing, and this is critical, Nick, and I've said this before when we've talked about propaganda, the internet right now, you and me and all these other free stations, the internet is our free speech. It is our First Amendment. Without the internet and what you keep doing and all the other, freelance journalists out there are doing, we would have no freedom of thought, would be at the mercy of the mainstream media. And we already know that that is largely propagated information. And we'd be toast. I mean, we'd be in really rough shape if there was not free speech going on. So without it, really, we're slaves to the mainstream media, and that would be a dangerous place to be. So that would be two reasons to answer your question for them to want to shut the internet down. And they've already talked about it. Terry Britton over with the internal commission at the EU, he's been wanting to shut down Elon Musk for a long time. And again, I've been talking about this stuff for years and been aware of it for years, decades. And now we're really seeing it come to, again, a head, I think in the next 3 months, 6 months, year, who knows what it may be.
I mean, what kind of an effect would it have on the people if they went through a blackout? No electricity, no, nothing, no phones, no internet, nothing. I mean, no Wi-Fi. What kind of an effect would that have on the public? Do you think that would really, I mean, if COVID woke up a few people, do you think that the blackout would wake up 90%, 80% of the population? I think people would get very angry. I think people would have enough. They would have to reevaluate the whole reality.
Yeah, well, that would do it. Shutting down the internet. Well, first, people are addicted to the internet. They're addicted to their phones. So cutting it off would turn hundreds of millions of people into junkies going through withdrawal. It would be ugly. And truly, the internet and digital devices and media, the smarter they get, the dumber we get. The less really good memory muscle and cognitive skills we get, the more we're dependent on internet. But if it just went down, say the internet went down, I think we'd have the emergency broadcasting system would come up. But I think a lot of people it'd be a huge wake up call. But remember, right now, never have we seen in our history of civilization this many generations of people all living and so many people believing so many different things. I mean, I think part of what's happened with the internet and certainly the mainstream media is many people are confused. And I know this by people that I see and people my colleagues see. They're coming in believing all sorts of different stuff. And of course, the narrative for the mainstream media is if it doesn't agree with what they want, it's conspiracy theory. But any of them have been proven true. So
if there was a blackout, and you couldn't even watch TV. There was no signal. You couldn't even switch on your phone, or there was no signal. And if they lived with that, if the people lived with that for, say, a few days or to a week even, which is a very long time because we're so used to the internet. If something had come on after that, which was the emergency broadcast system, everyone would be sitting down to watch it because they'd be like, crap, there's something going on my phone now. There's a signal. We're getting this information. And everyone would be wanting to watch it after waiting for signal for so long. What are your thoughts on that type of, disclosure to the public if we were to get an emergency broadcast from our governments? And do you believe this would happen or could happen?
Well, absolutely, it would happen. We've always had really like DEFCON 1, DEFCON 2, DEFCON 3 emergency systems set up to communicate with everybody in the event of some kind of emergency. I don't know how it is in the UK right now, but my family in Australia and also in America, we've had a lot of tests for the emergency broadcast system, more than we usually get. I mean, I think we've had 6 in the past 6 months or 8 months. So we have some level of preparedness, but here's the thing. We have to make sure we can rely on what comes through that emergency broadcast system. Here's another thing with our faulty communication. We have to trust whoever's on the other end of that giving us the information. Now, who can we trust? I don't know. Military, perhaps. Would we even know who is giving us this information? If there was some other kind of meltdown, like you alluded to, it would be like, I've heard the term Mad Max. If we ran out of food, if we didn't have emergency services, our society would go, bonkers in a short period of time. And hey, we saw this with COVID. In the first couple of days of COVID, you saw people racing into stores, cleaning out the shelves, hustle bustle, end of days type behavior. Not everywhere, but a lot of places we saw that with COVID in the first week or two. It was after people were, shut down for 3 or 4 days, and then they're allowed to go to the store. We saw really crazy, insane type behavior. So that's might be what it looks like. So
Someone said to me, "Oh, there'll be another lockdown." Well, I've heard, I don't think this is true, but some people say, "Oh, there will be another lockdown, and then we'll all be at home, and then the emergency broadcast comes on." But I don't think that's the case because we really have to, in order for the emergency broadcast system, if there were to have one, the only way you'd get the attention of everybody is when they're not used to having signal on their phones for after a few days because we're so addicted to it. When there has to be an event of a blackout in for that to happen. Now, if there's emergency broadcast, emergency tests happening, and I want to confirm that, yes, we have had those tests also in the UK. That means that there must be some kind of preparation going on to make sure that these alerts and systems are happening successfully in an event of a possible blackout. And I'm thinking, if they're testing this properly, do you think it could be the white hats taking precaution to make sure that this operation runs smoothly? And what do you think about that?
well, none of us really know. We've never, in most of the people living today, have never been through, this type of event. Most of our wars in England and in America have been fought on other lands. What if it comes to countries and territories that there's never been war? So we're relying on the fact that there is food depots, that there is a military system that would come into effect and stop looting and criminal behavior, and that there would be a water supply, and then we do have an emergency grid of electricity or power energy that would come on and protect us and default to it. We would think that we have the infrastructure and the just kind of that defensive preparation for such an event. But actually, none of us really know that that's in place. We're just counting, Pollyanna-ish. We're just kind of counting that that's in place. I believe it is. I just don't know what it will look like to have to access it and not have it a dress rehearsal or a trial run. because we won't have a trial run.
Mm.
It's like if we run into serious problems and a cyber attack, and we actually do have the media go down and we go into some kind of martial law, there isn't going to be a test of that. We're just going to be in it, and we don't know what that looks like. And again, all the information that most people get these days is on the internet, and there's so much of it. You have to be discriminate on what you look at, what you see, be able to look what the propaganda is, look who the liars are, and really disseminate what the truth is from that. So
Absolutely. I mean, if we had this emergency broadcast system and they were showing the arrests of child traffickers, for an example, it would be somewhat kind of clear as to who's really showing this. But then if we have the other side, the bad side, telling us that, for an example, Trump's a dictator, which is a very obvious example, we would know which side that is. However, it could be delivered where it's very, very down the middle and ambiguous, and nobody would know if it's coming from the bad guys or the good guys. This is the kind of delivery. Now, if there was such delivery where it's so ambiguous, you don't know which side it's coming from, what type of delivery do you think we would be expecting to hear?
I would think, I mean, and I put a lot of thought into this and discussed it with other colleagues. If it came to that, I really believe our armed forces and generals and people in charge of the military in the United States and in Great Britain, United Kingdom, they would have to be the ones that would take over the media. They would take over the delivery of information. If we look at World War I, World War II, other great conflicts, communication is probably of the greatest importance. And so we would have to have one source. We wouldn't have, all these mainstream media talking heads coming out and giving their opinions. You would have to take control over the internet and the media, and just have military present, here's what's going on. You'll be advised. We're in charge. We'll have all the evidence or the proof or the realities coming out, the factual stuff that you need to know. And we would need to rely on that, or at least we would have to try to rely on that. So that's how I think it would be delivered. And once again, the internet has changed our brains in so many ways. And depending on your age, the younger you are, the more addicted to internet you are. Research shows that people sign on to the internet and they don't go all over the place. Most of us go to very specific areas of information that we trust. Now, it might be just a kid goes to play some video game. It could be a lady or a man that just goes to some shopping channel. Or it could be people that go to very specific sources, like people just like to come and listen to you and some of the other truthers out there. And so we don't have time to go over the entire internet. We go to really trusted sources or places where we're getting the feedback and the information that we want. We're just not inclined to surf the whole net. Who has time for that? So if it were an emergency situation, a lot of those other channels would probably be closed down, and it would need to be an official source that we could depend on, that we could trust, that would give us direction, that would be able to guide people to what to do. And remember, this isn't the United States or the Great Britain of 1776. We're not those people anymore. We're modernized, click a button, immediate gratification, dopamine rush. I mean, we're a different civilization, and we're not combat ready people. Most of us out there are not that. So we would need direction. I mean, I think we have civilian militia out there all over the place. We've heard about that, but that would need to be highly organized in the case of a huge event. And again, there won't be a practice run. It'll just happen.
If the good guys are in control and have, they're practicing, to do this emergency broadcast and the good guys are in charge, let's just presume for a minute, which I hope to, of course,
Yeah.
then maybe the film Leave the World Behind.
Yeah.
There might be, when you said that you watch something, you anticipate what to expect, and then it helps the brain to accept it. Maybe they're doing that to protect our psychological warfare in order to then funnel in the information that we need to know through the emergency broadcast system. And they're using Obama's name to kill two birds in one stone, as we're at it. So do you think that's a possibility?
Well, these days, anything isn't a possibility. I mean, I never thought that I would live in my lifetime to see this event happen. I thought it would happen many years from now, but here we are. Um, Once again, we'd have to trust the source of that emergency broadcast system. Now, I haven't seen this movie yet, and I don't know if I will. To me, it's another disaster flick that is promoting, some propagated belief and anticipatory expectation, all propaganda techniques. And I would just have to think, Nick, is this reliable? Is this a real idea of the truth of what it's going to be? Or is this what they want us to start to be conditioned to in order to respond to it? So again, there won't be a dress rehearsal if we do have a crisis or a war or a cyber attack where our whole media goes down. That's we don't know what that looks like. Here's an interesting point. We know Elon, we've talked about Elon. We've got Starlink going up there. But now I just read that Jeff Bezos from Amazon is sending up satellites to create his own kind of Amazon platform. So it won't be just defaulting if we have a cyber break fallout or attack. It won't just be defaulting to Starlink and Elon's network. We could have, Jeff Bezos having his network up there. So once again, here's the fight for the internet and pumping information out. Part of what we hear on our internet, I think you and I believe entirely, and so do millions of other people. Because look at your numbers. Look at the numbers for these other truthers. I mean, they're through the ceiling. Look at the numbers for mainstream media. They've plummeted. People just don't even watch them anymore. So the real battle for information, and again, the internet is our First Amendment. And that's why they're desperate to take it away. I don't watch Alex Jones. I respect what he does, but his title of his show is right on. Information Wars, Info Wars. He's right on with that title because this is what we're taking in. Here's a fun fact just to realize how crazy this is. In 1 minute from now, YouTube will have loaded 500 hours of new content. 500 hours in 1 minute. That means in 1 hour from now, Nick, it will have loaded 30,000 hours of new content. And by a day from now, tomorrow morning at 8:00, there will have been 720,000 hours of brand new content loaded on YouTube. To put it into perspective, how long would it take to watch 720,000 hours of content on YouTube? 82 years of life.
That's crazy. Wow.
And that's just YouTube. So we've got all this information coming in. People go to specific places on the internet to get whatever they want. Some don't even care about the banking system in trouble. Some people don't care about their Bill of Rights or their First Amendment being stolen from them. They just go right to a video game or a shopping channel or watching reruns of a show from 30 years ago. There's so much content on the internet. It can't, our memory system is just not capable of even taking a lot of it in. And that's why I say we have to be very discriminant and cautious about who we listen to. always fact check yourself. Don't let somebody else fact check. Do your own research and recognize what's coming in is it true or is it not? One other thing, and I think this is so interesting, and people don't realize this. China, Russia, Venezuela, North Korea, Iran, they spend hundreds of millions of dollars every month just keeping Western media out of their countries. Out of their countries. Think about that. They are so on defense from the garbage of Western propaganda. You know, they're trying to control their own countries for better or worse. I mean, there's problems obviously with that, but they're desperate to keep anything from Western mainstream media out of their countries. And that's why they control the internet so much, especially in countries like China.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
they don't want the information you're giving out or all these other great truthers. I won't name them, but we know who they are.
I mean, I
And
have to say, I get flagged on Instagram for being censored in certain countries.
that's all part of the control from the EU. They're saying it's their policies that there's no hate speech and no criminal activity. Nobody's getting threatened. But that's really a cop out. Free speech is free speech. If some nut job comes out there and starts threatening a particular individual or group or whatever, it's like, yeah, you should be shutting them down. But anything short of that, we have a right to know information, whether we choose to listen to it or not, and be able to evaluate that from the source ourselves.
Absolutely. Well, clinical psychologist Sean Hara, thank you so much for joining me today and sharing all your views today. Really interesting conversation. Is there anything else that you'd like to say to the viewers before we finish?
No, but I just hope, once again, everybody thinks about how important our internet is. It's our First Amendment. Without it, we are in really tough shape. And again, to be discriminate and really decipher what you're getting and from whom, and be skeptical and do research. That's just critical.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much. And Merry Christmas to you. And we'll speak very soon. You take care.
Thanks, Nick. Merry Christmas to you.